Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting in Beaumont on November 21st, 2023. We are beginning this meeting at 5 p.m. and I will start with a land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. All right, we will move to the adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Good evening, Deputy Mayor. We do have a few changes to the agenda this evening. As you can see on the screen, we have a change to an additional attachment 1 and 3 for item 4.2. And we would like to address item 4.4 at the beginning of the meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Is there anyone that would like to move the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I would move that the November 21, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be adopted with the following changes. Address item 4.4 at the beginning of the meeting and add attachment 1 and 3 to item 4.2 Child Care Services Business Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will call for the vote. Yep. Thank you. That passes unanimously. And next, we will do the adoption of the minutes for the Committee of the Whole, October 17, 2023 minutes. Is there a councillor that would like to move that? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. Prior to making the motion, I just wonder if I could just ask the administration to correct the typo in my name misspelled in item 5, please. And I'd be pleased to make the motion that the October 17th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as amended be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? No? I'll start the vote. Thank you. That passes unanimously. And now we are moving into our presentations. So looks like we are starting with the community financial sustainability. And I believe Brian and Katie are presenting for us this evening. Come on up. Oh, yes, Mr. Dowler will start with some remarks for us. Go ahead, Mr. Dowler.
Thank you very much. I can't miss an opportunity to join in on the fun here. So thanks for the opportunity. Tonight, administration is really excited to present the report on community financial stabilization. This report is specifically the result of a motion passed by Council at the July 18th, 2023 Special Council meeting, where Council asked administration to prepare a report on the management of land as an asset. In preparing the report, it became apparent to administration that there were numerous competing priorities that had been identified through previous master plans and reports. Some examples are our complete community, our places in play, Council's strategic plan for 2022 to 2026, and the real estate development strategy. These plans, along with others that have been accepted by Council in conjunction with other work that were being developed, all list opportunities to grow and expand services. In some cases, what has been identified through extensive engagement with the community required new or expanded expanded city facilities. In almost all cases, what was identified has operational impacts on city resources. In a growing community such as Beaumont, it is completely understandable that such a list of programs and services would be identified as needs by the community. The challenge, however, has become how to move forward with these needs in an environment where resources are limited and all items cannot move forward at the same time. To further complicate this, it is expected that the growth trends will continue to put pressure on city services. Considering this, administration believes that now is the best time to undertake an engagement to assess the community's priorities for expansion of services and amenities, and to try and introduce a thoughtful discussion on strategies to deliver on these priorities in a financially sustainable manner. In order to provide some specifics on the engagement plan, I will turn things over to Mr. Brian Murray and his team from BNA, who will take the committee through a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dollar. I will turn your mic on. I'm not sure which one it is. Oh, there we go. There you are.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, and members of City Council. Thank you for having BNA Studios and Souls & Company here to present you the engagement program to determine community priorities, explore new and innovative fiscal opportunities to achieve those priorities. Katie and I will walk you through that approach that was created working alongside city staff. And we have plenty of time to answer any questions toward the end. We are excited by this project. Council's direction sends a strong message that the City of Beaumont is doing things differently. From calling on citizens to inform Council on their priorities to hosting bold conversations on fiscal responsibilities, this initiative signals new ways of engaging Beaumont. As the fastest growing municipality in the Edmonton metropolitan region, Beaumont is hosting critical conversations with citizens to better understand opinions, tolerance for risk, and highlight opportunities for how Council can make endorsed financial decisions backed by solid information, reducing Council and city risks. Working alongside your administration, our team has prepared a highly inclusive, exciting citizen engagement program that will explore community-wide priorities on a wide range of initiatives and services, and working our way to exploring ideas on how trade-offs, tolerance for risk, and opportunities identification can support administration and Council make decisions. As with all of our engagement strategies, we begin with the end in mind. Our hope is to ensure Council has a clear understanding of where citizens place their priorities, tolerance and even curiosity for various funding mechanisms, competing priorities for citizens and where tensions lie, where the mutuality might reside, and for ongoing use by administration, an engagement toolkit that can be used throughout the city for various initiatives. Katie?
And how are we going to get there, and how are we going to get at these important questions and the answers that you're looking for? As Brian has indicated, there's really two parts to our exploration. The first part will be narrowing down what's important to citizens, the things that are over and above the essentials. And so we're going to make it clear that some things are non-negotiable. And this is where we galvanize interest in the many, many opportunities that the city has before it. And we narrowed down to the importance of those priorities. We'd like to form a citizen impact panel to help us get started, to make sure we capture local knowledge, local information, and then local flavor in our planning. These people will be from a cross-section of Beaumont and include wide-ranging demographics, including youth. We'd also like to offer a full menu of tactics that will appeal to all ages and stages of life in Beaumont. So one of the ideas, we will go to where the people are, whether that's an event, a hockey game, shopping area, which I have become very familiar with, and utilize digital engagement. And we want to have small group meetings with local community groups and local community leaders. And from this, we're going to have a guiding list of priorities. We think that the citizens of Beaumont may be surprised, very pleasantly surprised, by all that is going on in the city and the number of recent planning documents that are needed to build this thriving modern municipality. And Mr. Dollar referred to some of those. There are many, many reasons to celebrate what has been done across a multitude of diverse interests in Beaumont. We think people may also be surprised by the volume of competing priorities and the realization that their priorities may not be the same as their neighbors' priorities or others in the community. And that certainly is the task in front of us. And as we mentioned, while there are some opportunities, there's also some non-negotiables, those items that involve the city to provide services, particularly as people around the region continue to discover the magic that is Beaumont and choose to make this the place that they wish to reside in and build a life here. So really now is the chance to envision opportunities that align with your strategic plan. We were really struck by your strategic plan of building our tomorrow today. And the lines that really struck us were building our tomorrow today and Beaumont's aspiration of an economically prosperous and financially sustainable community to last generations. So through your plan, you've already planted the seed of financial lens from which we can move forward. So this seed is planted in these foundational documents, and we can really lean into that as we move into phase 2. So phase 2 is going to have us exploring various funding mechanisms and encouraging people to look at different funding options and new pathways. Again, this is a bold and respectful approach that Council has initiated, and it will signal that this is different from regular engagement sessions. While the first phase was looking at an array of priorities and narrowing them down, this phase looks at this list and explores how are we going to make this happen. This is where we have conversations on transforming wish lists into reality. While we begin to see these ideas in phase 1. Phase 2 is where we address the innovative thinking required to lead us through the new fiscal realities. So phase 1 is going to be where we hear from people interested in community building. Phase 2 will be where we hear from people interested in financially sustainable community growth. They may be the same people, they may not. But we want to hear from that spread of people. Our tactics in this phase will include setting the stage for fiscal discussions and generating alternative pathways for funding opportunities. While what we have learned in phase 1 is going to inform what we do in phase 2, some of our early thinking has us thinking about a community symposium with community leaders, really having roll up your sleeves workshops with stakeholder groups and socializing some of these ideas that are generated with the public and getting the public's views on these.
We like to think that the end of this project is just the beginning of actioning the plans for delivering priority amenities and services in the city. It will give you the information you need to make informed decisions that reflect the hearts and minds of citizens of Beaumont. And of course, you will factor your own knowledge and insights into the decision-making process. As we also think that the result of participating in the process, the community itself will have a more holistic understanding of the many competing requirements facing decision makers. You will also have a repeatable engagement model, tactics, and communication templates that can be used for engagement projects throughout the city on an ongoing basis. We will continue to work closely with your administration to roll out the look and feel of the project, and we're scheduled to kick things off the week of December 4th and attend Brighten Up Beaumont festivities, which we're really looking forward to on December 9th. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for that presentation and bringing forward this very important and pertinent topic. I think growth is a necessity for a lot of communities, but as we all know, it also brings a lot of challenges. So assessing the community's priorities is certainly a key point in that. So I will open it up to my fellow councillors for questions and comments. We will start with Councillor Natellenbos.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. Just a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank you for this. I think this is so important, the engagement factor. The only way we can develop this community and or city is by engaging its population. So I do appreciate your guys' approach as to how you're trying to take this on. I do just have a couple of questions. I believe you guys had mentioned that that your engagement will be different from potentially some traditional sessions. And you guys had mentioned something such as Brighten Up Beaumont and events that you'll attend. As much as I would love for everyone to participate in an online survey, we've seen in the past that it just doesn't happen. So in addition to that one event, what kind of other events will you guys be attending to try and get that participation so that we can actually get some very valuable feedback?
Do I push this button?
No, that's okay. You're still on. You're good.
I'm like, thank you. We're doing a review right now to find out other things that have been done previously in Beaumont, what worked, what didn't work as successfully. So we're going to capitalize on those. We really want to tap into the community groups and community leaders from across the Beaumont and get their advice on how to get additional responses. The community input panel that we're proposing would be a really good starting place. And we're almost looking at them not to be champions of the solution, but champions of the process. And so that we would encourage them to get people involved, to encourage people to get involved, and we would tap into their networks. Some things. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, if I could just add, Councillor, great question. And as you can imagine, fiscal sustainability doesn't really spark a lot of community conversation unless it comes directly down to their taxes. So we definitely, through more strategic, while we do have a large, more public opportunity, it is about those strategic conversations, more of a one-on-one, small group settings, and really connecting in with those leaders in the community that can really help to inform. So as Katie mentioned, the community impact panel, and as we go through the process, helping to further refine and find those community leaders within the actual community. That's part of the process of leaning on the community impact panels, helping to further drill down. So phase one, I think we have a clear picture. Phase two, to be determined, quite frankly, with input from the community and from administration and others.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for those responses. I do have two more questions. I'll make them quick. Kind of touching on what you discussed, for someone not familiar with something like a citizen input panel, are you able to just define that and what that might look like?
Yeah. So the citizen input panel is something that we've used for very complex situations. And basically it's a group of citizens. They could be appointed, nominated, apply. There's various ways that we could get them, but we do want them from a cross section. And I think if we look at council here, we want one of each of you replicated. So someone who's really involved in community recreation, for example, someone who's knows about youth and education, someone who's original Beaumont, who goes way back and has those roots. Those people that own small businesses. We're looking at all of those kinds of people to sit on this community input panel or citizen input panel. We haven't quite landed on our name. We do a term of reference for them. It's important to acknowledge that it's not a decision-making body. So they are advisors. They tell us sort of who's who in the canoe, who would be good, who would be not so good. This will never work in Beaumont. We need to hear that. Those kinds of things. So there really are our advisory panel in a way, Councillor. Okay. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and there'd be about 8 to 12, 8 to 15, depending on how many people want to join in. And people from diverse, I could talk about this all night.
I know. You've had a few.
People from diverse perspectives is who we really really want. As Brian said, and then I promise I'll be quiet, the financial impact ideas may not motivate everyone. We want to find out those people who can look at financial sustainability and get excited about it and can see beyond, this is just not a conversation about mill rate, or this is just not a conversation about taxes. And so we'll be looking for those people, Councillor.
Perfect. And this is just a question on a very high level, because I'm not expecting specific answers, because that's going to be part of this whole process. But financial sustainability, sustainability as a whole is a term that I find is often overused. Same thing with financial feasibility and the practicality behind it. You had mentioned alternative pathways. Again, without getting into too much detail, it's obviously important to find appropriate funding to help fund some of these initiatives. Do you have anything just general, again, very general, in terms of what some of those alternative pathways could potentially be?
You were right when you said, don't expect answers. We don't have them, and that's a part of the process. We're not financial experts. We're planning and engagement experts. So our role through this process is to be an extension of you and your administration to help populate some of the knowledge behind that. So a big part of phase one is about priorities. Phase two is about getting to, some opportunities. And that's going to have a large amount of education that will be a part of developing the program, rolling out that program, ensuring that there's awareness, understanding, and ultimately the opportunity to have meaningful input through that process. So that's through talking to Mr. Mike Dowler, getting financial expertise, looking abroad to outside to look at different financial mechanisms. But the usuals that are on the table, everything from your levies or your rates to other opportunities that you might see in your traditional land development, and then other opportunities that you might see through external agencies or granting organizations. There's a plethora of other opportunities that we'll explore through that process.
And can I just supplement? You're right, financial sustainability not only is overused, but it might be something, as Brian said, that doesn't excite people. So how do we make it exciting? How do we get everyone on the same page? That's going to be a fairly complex page in some ways. And so we are doing, as Brian indicated, our own research. If we were to have a symposium, for example, we're looking at bringing in experts who have done things in other jurisdictions that are similar, just to say these are possibilities. Let's explore these possibilities. Let's be prepared to, I hate the term think outside the box, but let's be prepared to go places where we've not explored before.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, thank you for all those answers. And I would just encourage the general population to participate in this, everyone who's here and everyone who's watching online.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Natellenbos broke the ice pretty good on a couple of those topics, but I am going to revisit maybe not revisit, but I'm going to ask you, how are you going to start this all off? So currently we have all kinds of surveys out there that get 82 to 264 responses like clockwork. Issue A, 82. Issue B, 264. Issue 3, 180. And here we are using that meager feedback to try and guide Beaumont. Challenging. People come rightfully and say, you're going to make changes based on that feedback. Well, that's the feedback we got. How are we going to get more? So my question is, how are we going to separate this initiative from the herd and from the group of feedback that we do day to day? The important feedback that we do day to day. Here's a survey, here's a questionnaire, here's an online, here's something to consider, here's something to consider. We need all that feedback, but we almost overwhelm citizens with it at the same time. And it's hard because we need the information, but it comes at you in bits and pieces. So there's a story to tell. And the story is going to be, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's why we need you involved, right? So I want to hear how you're going to do that. And then I want to talk about the go where the people go comment. So.
Okay. Do you want to take that? Do you want me to?
Why don't you start?
Okay. Absolutely accurate. We, through our work with administration, we learned that in the January to April, there's no fewer than 6 engagements happening, which is a great testament, by the way, to your team that's leading these, because you're quite right. It does engage people. We're needing to, as you identified, tell the story. And why is this important? And so we're launching December 4th, acknowledging that is getting to Christmas. We want some media presence around that. We want a big splash at a big event, such as Brighten Up Beaumont. And then we want the community input panel to help with that. How we differentiate from the others is something we may discover through the work of the community input panel and through different looks, different advertising, different opportunities to engage. But you're quite right. We do recognize that 84 to 260 is kind of the magic number that a lot of municipalities get, and we want to go for greater numbers than that.
Yeah, and I would just supplement, while we are looking for greater numbers, it's about the quality of the engagement. And so through the community input panel, through symposiums or other tactics that we end up exploring through this process, whether it be community stakeholder groups, it's about building knowledge and awareness and having that meaningful opportunity to give input. We would value that more than a number. So we do intend to bring in our mission, our marching orders from Mr. Dowler was next level of engagement, quote unquote. And we intend to do that. Yes, there's a larger community component that will be fun and engaging. And Katie and I have stories of fun and exciting engagements that we've done that have brought out hundreds and hundreds of people. But at the end of the day, we're talking about something so complex and specific that we need to get to the quality conversations. And that is not in a large public gathering, that is through strategic conversations. So I do hope that we're able to supplement a broad engagement campaign with very delicate and direct input that is meaningful for you to make decisions at the end of the day.
And our goal would be to have a waiting list. If we have a symposium and we top it at 100 or we top it at 50, let's have a waiting list. Let's see if we need to run another to drum up that level of interest that people say, I want to be part of this. This isn't just same old, same old. This is talking about really critical things. Knowing that they are not the ultimate decision makers, we need to make that very clear, but they are offering input to the ultimate decision makers.
Yeah, what you're going to learn from administration is you can dive into the groups that exist to get this, right? You dive into the Historical Society, yes, the Ag Society, the sports groups, the arts community, and just infiltrate those groups that already exist in the community. And I know you know this, but I'm saying this out loud because it's important that the folks that are watching this also can anticipate and ask, and that ask is going to be, please participate in what you're putting together. There's a lot of people that have a lot to say right now about budget, right? So if we really wanted you guys to show up, we should have put you with a 3% increase on the front page, and then we'd get everyone's attention, right? And we can just say, psych, so you got your attention, right? But in all seriousness, we need to make sure that we're getting people's attention and keeping it long enough for that meaningful input, right? What isn't helpful here is scrolling on social media. What isn't helpful is side comments and sidebar comments, talking down initiatives. There's enough of that exists out there. We need some true engagement. We need some people who care about the community to come forward and put in some time. So. Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to step on that soapbox a bit.
Well, and I think, the whole being able to understand a situation before you can solve it.
Yeah.
Becomes really important to us.
Yeah, please champion that message. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there's a story to be told. So I think really kind of telling the story and how we tell that story will be really important. Councillor McGough-Swain, you're up, and then Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, and nice to see you again. Thanks for coming in. So in the presentation you touched on, and these guys all talked about engagement, so I'll be very brief. You talked about the master plans. My concern is just consultation fatigue. We spent so much time going through these master plans, and we got very good feedback. And as these guys will point out, particularly the Parks, Rec, and Culture Plan, whatever that's called, Our Places, Our Play. Did a fantastic job and to get feedback on that. But like I really hope this isn't, hey, do you want an arts facility? Do you want, like, we've been down that road, right? It's more, to me, it's more about showing that realistic picture of, hey, we need a fire hall that's going to cost us $15 million down the road, right? Like these are the big, must-haves. How do we, so when we're looking at these kind of other things that we as a community want, how do we balance that out? So I hope our questions aren't focused around the, what do we want in Beaumont? Because then you're just going to get a long list. And the other point, and Kat touched on it here, around painting the picture, telling the story, right? Like this space here, for example, right? Like if you went and asked the public, hey, do we need a new city hall? They're all going to say no, right? But then if you weaved in the narrative that, hey, we've got significant lease costs, that we're paying 7 different buildings, whatever the number is, around the city, the administration is bursting at the seams here, and there is an opportunity here to be really strategic around how we, place potentially a new spot. So how do we? I just want to make sure that we're getting that narrative weaved into that program, because you're going to get very different answers depending on the way that you ask the question. So I just, you said you've talked with our team, but the presentation, like, I know you guys will do a good job, but the presentation is pretty general, right? I don't have a good flavor for how you're gonna talk about this, how you're gonna go out.
I'll start.
You start.
Yeah. So appreciate that, Councillor. And, yes, we do have a high level presentation for our introductory meeting with you, and happy to get more detailed as we progress with your interest. One of the things that we're very cognizant of, because we're rapidly compiling them, is that you have over 12 guiding plans and over 100 initiatives that you've engaged on. And so it is important to put those before the people and show we can't have everything now. It's what's the most priority and when, and potentially how to put in front of you to make those tough decisions. So I hear you crystal clear. This is not an aspirational vision of what Beaumont can become. You've done it. You've already documented them in all of your recent plans. Yes, new things will always emerge, but it's about grounding this in your fiscal realities and ensuring that we have those hard conversations. That is the difference between the big public conversation and the more focused, informed conversations with all of the community members that have been active and engaged to date. So we're very excited to have that conversation. In fact, that is the project, wrapped around a lot of exciting things.
Yeah, and you'll be familiar with that simple but complicated engagement model of what, so what, now what? And you've already done the what, you've done the so what. Now it's now what. But you've given me something to think about, and that's, can we structure these in the way of case studies, for example, and say, this is the situation, here's the story of this, here's this story, and provide them more information, case studies. So also, I think we referred to it, that they recognize the challenges that face you and the competing priorities that you're up against, and the limitations and the freedoms, and how do we do that? So point well taken, Councillor.
Yeah, I'll carry on just around, like this time I'll use the library as an example, right? If you went out and said, do we need to expand our library? Do we need a new library down the road in 10 years or whatever that number looks like? On its own, people are going to ask, well, how much is that going to cost? And that's going to be tough to find a library on its own. But if you tie in other priorities, things around the community that we need, like I just talked about here, or whether it's childcare, whatever, like if you can tell that narrative to say, well, it could be the possibility to get some efficiencies by weaving 2 or 3 of these priorities into some sort of structure or facility itself, right? Then that's where people start thinking, okay, we're not just thinking kind of one-off projects down the road. So I'm just hoping that we're yeah, and I know you, and by the way, your answer gave me a lot of comfort around the fact that you knew how many plans and commitments, and you see some head nods up here. So good work on your research on that. So I just, that narrative to me is super important, right? I can't stress that enough, that, when I have one-off conversations around a particular thing that people want, it's like, okay, nice, but can't do it. But if you combine and get those efficiencies that come with that, it's important. I want to pick up on a point, Councillor Tellenbosch talked about financial sustainability and that fun buzzword. And you also mentioned you don't want to use the word outside the box, so I'll use another awful word like innovative. So we're trying to get there, right? But when I look at our strategic plan, that's really what this council is trying to market ourselves as. like I'm looking for us to do things strategic ways that we can show that financial prudency, you know, whether it's land sales, land swaps, look at our assets, what do we have here? Like get super creative, right? Like traditionally every municipality, they go out and they build X, right? And they take this big debenture and then the taxpayers just pay it off over time, right? Like that's not going to sell here in Beaumont. We've got enough pressure here, just like every other municipality. But in order to get that community support, we need to show that we're actually getting creative here, right? That we have, and I know I have one of our friends in the room here who've given us a very good presentation in the past around vision. And I know these are high level concepts, but I think if you can show the community that we've got a path here, right? That this isn't as simple as, okay, we're going to borrow X amount of $1 million and you know, you're going to pay it off for 20 years, right? We're going to have to borrow something, right? But yeah, we're going to look at land swaps and we're going to look at where our assets are and get creative to show that we're actually taking this more seriously than just the easy way out. So that innovative or outside the box thinking, I'll try not to say those ever again, but that's really what we need to show the public, that we're taking the time to do this properly. So any comments on that? And I've got one more.
We're on the same page, Councillor. Those have been our marching orders, and we understand what the end result or the end objective is. How we get there is the journey that we're on today, and our commitment to you and this council and this community is to help build the understanding and awareness to have informed opinions, to give you the opportunity to make informed decisions. So the opportunity around all of the things that you talked about, all the good things that the community will want and desire, are informed through a step-by-step framework that allow us to arrive at that decision point. So that really is the journey.
Okay. And then my last question, if you don't mind, just on that journey, right? Like you talk about phase 1, phase 2, you said, you know, talk with the end in mind. Well, the end in mind to me is budget, right? What's realistic to bring something like this back? Just to give me a sense, and, you know, I was going to say I won't hold you to it, but I probably will. So like when you're out there talking to people, is this something that is going to be at our budget in a year from now where, hey, like here's the kind of overall concept, or is this, I know we're not going to do everything in next year's budget, but this report that comes back, that feedback, are we going to get something that's tangible in front of council for next budget this time next year?
I'll defer to Mr. Dowler on that question.
Certainly that's the hope, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. You know, I think, you know, there's a desperate need for this kind of input and prioritization, I will call it, for us to put a budget in front of council in the future. And so I'm hopeful we can get there. We'll see how the engagement goes. And I'm at least hopeful that we will have more information than we do today to inform the budget next year.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, we look at our financial capital plan 24 to 28. It's a bunch of numbers. Some of them are very big that scare me. And kind of every year we just kind of roll that over, right? And so we don't actually have the conversation around, okay, well, when are we actually going to, so we focus our budget discussions on this year, and rightly so. We have this nice document in there that we don't spend enough time on. And so to me, what you guys are doing are helping us have that informed conversation for next year. So you can probably hear the passion and excitement in my voice around this. Looking forward to it. And yeah, please, you know, please, when you're coming back for that phase 2, I'm not sure if there was a check-in with council or not there, but I'm really interested in hearing how we're going to tie in some of the more financial aspects to the conversation. So yeah, great presentation and looking forward to seeing the results. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. Councillor Penrod, you're up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, one second, sorry.
Katie and Brian, welcome, and thank you for your presentation. I appreciate the energy that you've brought to it. That gives me some hope and confidence that you'll get the level of engagement that you need. I'd like to share a reaction, a suggestion, and a couple questions, if I might. So a reaction, I think this is accidental, but I just want to raise the flag on it. You talk a couple times in your presentation around that this type of engagement will be different from the normal type of engagement. I think you said just in one of your replies, Katie, this is not the same old. And I just want us to be careful that we're not accidentally disparaging the engagement we've done previously or engagement that we'll do down the road, right? I do like that one of the outputs of this process is an ongoing engagement and communications strategy that we'll use. So I might try intentionally to use language like level up our engagement game, or we're after engagement excellence that's constantly trying to improve, right? So that's just a reaction. Suggestion, and this might be a question more for Mr. Dowler or Mr. Schwartz. I'll let the chair, Deputy Mayor, guide us on that one. We have this. So step one of your plan is affirming priorities, and it places an emphasis on identifying and engaging diverse members of the community. I wonder what we expect the impact of the recent pause of our equity, diversity, and inclusion work will be on this step. And I wonder if there might be an opportunity here for a targeted, facilitated engagement session to regroup that committee that is chomping at the bit and is paused through no fault of their own. I wonder if they might be a great group to engage sooner than later.
I will let Mr. Schwartz take this.
Sure, thank you very much, Councillor Penrod. Through the Mayor, Councillor Penrod, and the members in attendance. While those two things are separate and for different reasons, it's certainly something that we could consider, and we'll do that. Obviously, a great resource and people, like you said, that are chomping at the bit. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for clarifying. I didn't mean to draw any kind of connection to those two things. I just thought maybe an opportunity for them to be able to have their voices heard here. So questions. And this goes to my first reaction a little bit. How do you expect to dovetail your beginning engagement, kicking off right away, with current recruitment also open and underway for city committees and boards? Do you perceive any conflict or go ahead.
Yeah, we noticed that when we were on the website that is happening, and we will have to factor that in to the planning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pardon me. And I think some of my questions have been covered off, so I'll maybe just finish with this one. How do you intend to recruit the citizen input panel? It sounds like you're going to lean on them fairly hard. Maybe they'll give a disproportionate amount of time. And I wonder if you have any budget or inclination or plan for some kind of compensation for those folks. I know that we've recently updated some of our policies for council committees. I'm not saying pay people full-time or anything, but the move seems to be towards whether you're participating in a medical study or whatever kind of survey. Oftentimes people are compensated in some small way with a gift card or some sort of gesture. And we're seeing across the board, it's getting more and more difficult to recruit volunteers on all fronts.
Yeah, so. Certainly, Councillor, we're happy to look at, the opportunities to engage the right people, to have the right conversations, beyond the broader public community conversations that we have, whether that's any type of financial support or a stipend or something. We're certainly willing to explore. In our experience, we've never really had the challenge of bringing engaged people to the table, but noting that there may be some engagement fatigue. Perhaps there's a different tactic. And I wouldn't necessarily suggest that they will be overtaxed. Rather, we're going to lean on them to help build and guide the process. Their input wouldn't necessarily be held in a different regard than other members who would be participating through any of the associations or other groups that we form through this. And one other note, and particularly related to the EDI comment, is around gender-based analysis. And we do take them, we built that into our project, and Katie and our engagement team are all well-versed in that approach, ensuring that we bring diverse members to the table to really provide that spectrum. And the community input panel is intended to, well, yes, we do talk about business and schools and youth, it is to bring in the broader perspective on that spectrum of people. So I hope that we'll have that settled in a few different ways, regardless of administration's use of EDI.
Didn't mean to take that away from you. Also, we'll structure the community input panel that they'll have 3, maybe 4 meetings only through the engagement period. Won't be getting them to deliver flyers or anything like that. They'll be very strategic, well prepared in advance, lots of support from our team, and we can certainly discuss with administration some sort of recognition for that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're the experts. Not trying to suggest how you do your job, but it's more good. Coming from a perspective of wanting to make sure you have the resources to do what we're asking you to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Was there anything further? Or?
If I might, just maybe one more lead. I'm not sure if you're aware, we've just been through a by-election in Beaumont. So we had 10 candidates that did a fair amount of community engagement. Might be worth reaching out to some of them. Appreciate that.
I was here during the election, actually, and saw the signs and the campaigning. So yeah, acknowledging that. Thank you.
And I think just for information's sake, normally when we do these types of engagement pieces and stuff, there is often a portion where every councillor gets to sit down with them and gets to hear. So we're able to give our input and stuff like that. So that potentially that's part of it, but that's normally in the past kind of been part of the procedure. So you're good. You're welcome. And Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again. I've had some experience with you in the social sphere, more so the social sector, more so than in the financial sector that this is coming in under. But I have to say, I'm pleased that Mr. Dollar has brought it forward underneath the financial sustainability. This approach seems to work in very broad ways in getting people involved. And then it's not a decision-making body, as you said. And I think that more information is good if it's brought to us in a way that we can use it. And the timing is interesting. I thought having it back in May of next year, hopefully that gives us time when we're looking at the next year's budget. I think it's almost sad to me that we're not seeing it completed before this year's budget, because it would be really helpful to have at least another lens by which we can look at the financial priorities. My question, I think, is more fitted for Mr. Dowler. Mr. Dowler, we did the priority-based budgeting in the past, and I'm just wondering, I've lost track where we are with that, and how does that fit? Does it, or is that no longer a tool we're using?
It is still a tool that we're using, I would say, Councillor Barnhart. I think the challenge with priority-based budgeting is we just need a little bit of a reset, more so internally. And, the foundational piece of priority-based budgeting is identifying those programs and services. And we have to really go back and take another look at what was identified internally before we can really start to use priority-based budgeting as a tool effectively. So we've got a bit of work to do internally. My hope, though, is, and this would be some of the conversations that we have with Brian and his team going forward, is that we can build on what we have already done within the organization around priority-based budgeting through this engagement. And so when we're talking to the community about programs and services, it can lend itself to some of that information that we have around priority-based budgeting. And then the engagement and what we're hearing from the community will help inform, as we go forward with further implementation of priority-based budgeting internally.
Thank you, Mr. John. My hope is that they come together and that we see that. And when I look at the work that's ahead of these two folks and their army of people that may be helping them, there's a lot of documents and obviously a lot of searching into to see where the synergies are and make that all work. So I'm glad you're doing that work. It's a big piece of work. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. I don't see any other questions or comments from here. I think the outreach part will be very important. I don't have many questions myself, more just comments, but I think we really need to go where people are, as you said, to really connect with them. And as you've heard, we need to then have a clear path on then how are we going to put into what we hear into action. I think where you said people may not realize their priorities aren't necessarily their neighbors is very important. And that's something so often is the case. And as council, a balance that we have to constantly find. Prioritizing, into Councillor Monkoff-Swain's point on how we tell the story, especially ensuring the public is clear on exactly what choices they have. And where people will need to prioritize is key there. Financial sustainability and knowing kind of what our options are is something that was certainly a hot topic during our strategic planning sessions, especially I think as municipalities in general are definitely feeling the pressures across the board. So I look forward to more. Thank you, Brian and Katie, for your presentation and for your time this evening.
Thank you so very much.
Okay, next up, we will go back to 4.1, arts resourcing, and I believe Mr. Suter, that will be you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Paul Suter, Director of Recreation. Happy to be here this evening to present a report on arts resourcing and some strategies on that. When this stems from a June 27th council direction to prepare this report, I think looking at additional resourcing dedicated to the arts for the upcoming budget conversations potentially. And when we looked at this internally, there's a lot to unpack when you hear arts resourcing and what that means. We took some liberties to add culture as part of that bigger piece when you think about that. And before we looked at going forward, we wanted to just go backwards a little bit, just to highlight some of the stuff that council and Beaumont itself has been doing in this area for the last number of years. You know, it all starts with dedicated events resourcing, and events, of course, could be argued are part of arts and culture, of course, in the bigger picture. Events budget was increased last year, for example. Council made a motion to do that. That's a further support of that program. Back in 2019, there was a policy developed which basically committed council to support arts and culture, not unlike what they do with recreation. Oftentimes it's overshadowed by recreation. It's a little bit more firmly established in the public's purview. However, we all know that arts and culture is very strong in the community in the background. And that policy commitment by council brought with it a commitment to both resource and fund public art, arts in general, and also the formation of the Arts Council came from that work. So these are some of the tools that we've already had in place. You could also add the grant funding envelope overall as part of the arts resourcing toolkit, if you will. And that budget for grants funding has been going up annually $50,000. And we've seen tremendous uptake in some of those areas with the community grant program, for example, which was before council last Tuesday, which was overprescribed this year. And there were some tough decisions had to be made. So definitely there's an appetite for some of these activities. Now, they're not all necessarily arts related, but there's a cross section, and definitely arts and culture is touched both in the community grant program, as well as specifically with the Arts Council and the grant funding program that they've initiated the last 2 years. And getting some of those dollars out into the community for activities, programs, initiatives, and trying to support the groups and what they're trying to do in this realm. When we look at the next steps, we go back to 2019 when we did, as Councillor Monkoff-Swain alluded to earlier in the previous presentation, some great engagement on our master plan for recreation, our places in play. And some of the stuff that's in there is really talks about arts resourcing and culture resourcing. It talks about how to implement, taking what the community is telling you and how to put it into real tangible work. And one of those recommendations was what they called a community engagement officer. And That's a bit of a broad description. You can see when you look at the plan, there's a kind of one section in there on that. There's been definitely some conversation around community volunteer struggles. We hear that quite consistently with all the groups, quite frankly, both recruiting and retention, and strategic support, not just operational, but looking forward for the sustainability of those groups. And all of this plays into the bigger conversation around arts and culture. Administration, a couple of years ago, was able to convert some operational dollars that were already approved into a new position, which we call the team lead for arts and events. And that position was intended to further this initiative of supporting arts and events. And that has been working very well. That person is fully prescribed in a variety of methods, as you can see. The other thing that I would like to highlight for committee's thoughts this evening is the existing committees that we do have. So the Arts Council is transitioning to an Arts Advisory Committee. The Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, culture again is highlighted there. It's part of the agenda every meeting. So these are the things that are in the toolkit already to support the arts. But going forward, the logical next step would be further resourcing the staff capacity and whatever that looks like to support the program. Some of the duties and functions that are highlighted in the report were just some of the ongoing day-to-day administrative functions. The grants alone takes a tremendous amount of work in the different grant programs that we have now and how to support that. City liaison with the different committees, different things that you can see there, develop event volunteer program. There's a real need for that. And when I look at my team in this area, they're all at capacity. It's hard to keep asking folks to do things off the end of their desk because we see the need is there and we see where we want to go. We see what the committee told us back in 2019, what our master plan is indicating. So moving forward, I don't want to lobby necessarily for a position. That's not the intention of this report. I'll be clear. The intention of this report is to highlight, I walk a fine line, yeah, thanks, is to highlight what we've already done. And we've done things very well. There's been some learnings. We've reset a few things, and I'm excited for 2024. And part of that 24 Arts Advisory Committee, we're going to really lean on that group going forward strategically. For me, it's more than just moving grant funding around. It's strategic direction, which that committee then will make recommendations in this area, how best to support arts and culture going forward, and bring that back to council. That would be their main purpose going forward. So we're excited about that. We also were before council not too long ago talking about a one-time project for festival and event strategy. Again, that came out of the master plan from 2019 as a recommendation. All these things fit into the puzzle as to where we need to go. So when you talk about arts resourcing generally, it sounds like it's money, but it's more than money. It's capacity, it's resourcing, it's using the tools we have effectively or more effectively and bringing them together in a strategic manner to support our community. So with that, I'll wrap up and be happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. I can certainly see the value in this. I like that it is an all-encompassing role to include kind of arts, culture, and events. Seems like the timing of the role may be a little bit relevant here as to how you kind of ended. And the difficulty in finding volunteers is certainly a struggle in our communities. So if this could help that, I think that would be important. I will open it up to my fellow councillors and Mayor for any comments or questions. There's a few here, so we'll start with Councillor Penrod, then Munkoff, Swain, Van Newkirk, Barnhart, and then Nutella-Boss. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McCook. Thank you, Mr. Suter, for the report. I really appreciated this report, especially as a bit of a newbie. I appreciate the timelines that you've laid out and how you kind of walked us through some of the development. And then I appreciate the vision that you're casting here too. I always am impressed by the thoughtfulness and the care that our city staff from top to bottom put into these reports. I was told that committee of the whole is the place where we can roll up our sleeves and get into the weeds on stuff a bit. So I just want to react to what I think is a really exciting idea that you've opened up, I think. And you tell me, Mr. Suter, if I'm hearing you wrong or making incorrect assumptions. But it sounds to me, maybe a basic question first. The arts policy as it stands already includes a funding escalator. Am I correct in that?
Thanks for the question. The previous iteration had a 3-to-1 ratio, yes, for dollars. The new iteration that's coming online here shortly, the recommendation was not to tie council's hands to that funding formula. The language in that is a little bit more vague and interpretive, but what it does is it provides flexibility, because the 3-to-1 is a very difficult thing to get to. It has never been firmly established what should be or could be included in that ratio from the culture side or the arts side. And recreation, of course, the cost of that keeps going up. So the funding for that goes up. So you're always playing a catch-up role there. So that the language in the new policy speaks to funding it and looking at it annually as part of the operational budget discussion, so that it gives council the opportunity to decide basically annually if you want to bump something up or scale something back or status quo. So you're not going to be bound to that 3-to-1. That's been the recommendation on the new policy.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think the idea that fascinates me here still stands, is that we've set a clear intention to, over time, increase this funding, and how we do that is less important. What I like is that you are kind of vision casting with the arts community and the stakeholders in the new Arts Advisory Committee around this idea of maybe dollars isn't the only way that we support you. And I think I'm guessing from conversations I've had in that community and that they're having with one another, that they see that the need that you've expressed and made clear here in your report too, that there are sort of these administrative support roles that we could sort of unlock new potential in the arts and culture communities. So I'm kind of imagining a graph with an X and a Y axis, and us maybe making something formal that says, you know, as funding goes up over time, doesn't matter really which axis you put it on, but there would be these trigger points where any additional funding past this plateau triggers a new staff position, right? So that the next $90,000 of funding, just to use the number that you threw out there, is now unlocked, and that's the way the next bit of support from the city comes before more cash is offered. If I could just, maybe you could react to that idea, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks for the question or the comment. I think for me, that sounds very much a strategic conversation, and that's exactly what the Arts Advisory Committee, I would hope, will be undertaking. All the engagement formulates into a master plan. So you've heard from your community, but then you need someone to take that and move it forward. And of course, things change over time for a variety of reasons, but then council needs to know what those changes are and what the impacts are. So strategically, that's exactly what the conversation should be, whether it's an X graph or a Y graph, or I like pie charts, whatever the case is. I think you're on to the right path there, Councillor Penrod.
Good. Nope, thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Councillor Monkowsky, you're up.
Yeah, thanks. A comment and a quick question. So thanks for the overview here. You know, I was struck by the comment up here about in September 21, we hired a new team lead arts and events, and basically what you're saying here is, you know, after a couple of years, we need more work. I think that is 99% down to the fact that you hired an excellent person there, and they're doing such a fantastic job. So I know you know this, but you know, please pass on our thanks to Ms. Mancher and all the work that she does. You know, respect from us up here and as well as the community out there. So, you know, we've kind of created our own opportunity. I'll use that language. So, yeah, I think it just shows the value of putting someone and dedicated time there. And as we went through that arts policy, a lot of the requests from the arts community was to dedicate people and time to it. So yeah, what you've laid out here, I mean, check every box. So this is fantastic. The question that I have, and I'm sure it was submitted in 7 people's written question as part of our budget process. I'm not sure if this position's included within our budget or not, and I don't want to get into a budget discussion now, and we'll get into that. But we couldn't see in that budget package whether what positions were in or out. So you talk about 90K in here. Like, is that? Do you know if that is currently funded in the budget that's coming up?
Thanks for the question and the positive comments. No, it's not. And I want to be clear that I wasn't specifically speaking about one position. There's a variety of ways we could look at it. We would just look at increasing resourcing to the program overall and how best to deliver that. It doesn't always mean one person.
Sure, to take your point. But so the 90K potentially that you've got in here, right? Whether it's a position or spread across so what you're saying is currently that's unfunded through that budget process. And apologies if I missed it on page 136 or whatever it is in the budget document. But do we have a one pager on that? Do we identify that in there? Is that this is unfunded? I guess my point is council can only react to what's in front of us, right? And we appreciate you bringing this forward, but as we get into budget, if there isn't that one pager that reminds us on this, and I'll make a mental note, I'm sure others will up here. We want to have that discussion and see what that looks like. So yeah, I guess maybe some confirmation, maybe Mr. Dowler, if you know off the top of your head, or Mr. Suter, if you know, is there anything in there that speaks to this number?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It may not be there, Councillor Moncalves-Swain. So it's something that we can provide when we provide the responses through the questions as an attachment to the question responses.
Yeah, that'll be, thank you. And certainly this particular item wasn't in my written response because I was waiting for this discussion to occur. But I think that's just a general theme you'll hear in some of our written questions around wanting to know, not necessarily just what's in there, but what's not in there, right? And how do we make sure we have that conversation? So again, great discussion, great report, and looking forward to having that discussion at budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in preparing for the meeting tonight, I wasn't quite sure what questions I would ask because I was waiting for the presentation to see how I felt about that. And I feel good. So well done on the presentation. One of the things that I'm left thinking and feeling is that the reset of the Arts Advisory Committee is actually precursor to funding and resourcing. That's how I feel. As much as I wanted to put a volunteer coordinator position in front of us last year, and I didn't, and I thought I would do that again this year. But when I think about this presentation and I listen to how you presented it, and I look at the opportunities that are in that bulleted list of things to resource, I think one of the things that we've been missing from the Arts Council, I guess, in its previous form was consistent and ongoing feedback. I feel like as a councillor, I've been trying to make decisions that I thought were in the best interest of the arts community in a vacuum, because I don't think that we've had as much information from the arts community as we've needed to try and make some of these decisions, and I still think we're in that spot. So just a comment for me is that I think the reset of the Arts Advisory Committee is precursor to funding, just because I think we need to start making some of these initiatives and taking advantage of some of these opportunities with guidance from and alongside the people in the community, not just how we think it should be done in the absence of that feedback. Does that make sense? Is there any comment on that? If there's not, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly how it should go in a perfect world. That would be the whole purpose of the creation and the establishment of the advisory committee, to do that strategic thinking, then make recommendations based on a variety of things and bring that back to council, which then informs council how to go forward with that. I think that's exactly what the purpose would be.
That's the vision, right?
That's the vision.
Yeah, and the kickstart is the formation and iteration that's coming soon. And just to be clear, the applications, I think, for the committees are still open. Is that correct?
Yes, they're still open.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, then Councillor Natellenbos.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the administration for bringing this forward. I guess one thought that came through when I heard the presentation and read it again in a couple of times is one of my concerns if we professionalize the support too much. And I'm saying this carefully because I do support the need for more support. My worry is that it becomes city-led and not community-driven. And I've lived this life, and it's a tricky balance to support, but not take over. And professionals are good at that. Like, you know, you learn from experience, and then you want to do it the way you know it works. And some of the things that are listed here, and I know I appreciate that you're giving us your best thoughts at this time. When it says down the bottom of the list of duties for this position, supporting all city-led events, works all city events, planned by the community event coordinator. Just a caution, like, let's not take over to the extent that then we don't have anyone thinking they're good enough to do it in a community. And that's the one thought I had that was kind of a reminder. Let's not go down that road again. I think I saw a little bit of that happen with the city events committee, and it's hard to watch because the community members are really trying their hardest. They need help, but they don't need someone to take it over and take it away from them. So, Mr. Suter, just maybe give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Barnhart. That's a great point, and that's not the intention of that bullet, actually. I think I'm speaking specifically about the city-run events, not anything beyond that scope. However, when you look at the master plan, it talks about in a perfect world, the city wouldn't run any of these things. They would be run by other organizations. Potentially, the city could sponsor them, provide some resourcing in kind, financial, human resourcing, whatever it is. But that would be where we want to get in a perfect world. It talks about what we do now, partnering, which we're in that sort of that partnering mode now in a lot of ways. But then the evolution would be, if those are robust and sustainable groups and organizations that are doing this stuff, then we can let go and just become a financial or resource contributor to that event. That's the evolution which is laid out in the master plan. We need to get there. We need to support them in the interim, build up their capacity, and then hopefully one day we can get to that point. Absolutely.
If I could just add one other part to that, building the capacity of the nonprofit sector. I think we're lagging in that here in Beaumont. I don't know how to do that exactly, but this might be the position where it can be, again, some ideas, public education around how do you start a nonprofit? How do you do the financial management from a nonprofit lens? I mean, things like that are desperately, I heard that word before, but desperately needed in our community because there just aren't enough new starts of volunteer groups. And this may be the way to do that. I know volunteer coordinator was the other title that was used in the past, but if this is taking it through an arts and cultural lens, I'm good with that. I think we need the support, but I think the community needs to be encouraged to continue to be passionate and use the volunteer efforts that are there, but help them to do that. So I appreciate where this is going and I appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Natellenbos.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think just tying into Councillor Barnhart's comments there, I do, this will be to you, Mr. Suter. I do think that there is a lot of opportunity to capitalize maybe on some resources that exist in our community. Just one example off the top of my head, I have quite a few friends with children, high school age, And as we know, we are a community filled with a lot of youth and growing youth. Have we ever explored the opportunity of maybe giving the option to some of our high schools to work with them for let's say credits for work experience in a scenario like this, especially if they're heavily tied to arts and culture, and that's something that they love and they want to explore a little bit more?
I can't speak for the past, what's happened there. I'm not aware of that in our area, us focusing on that, but I do believe that the Arts Advisory Committee, that is a strategic idea that would live in that committee. And then that's something that they would flesh out. If they see the value there, they can make that recommendation and how to proceed with that. There's lots of ideas out there how to move these things along, but we need that focus from that strategic body. That's the goal of that advisory committee, in my mind.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think to Mr. Suter's point, I think really engaging our community and supporting these groups to kind of almost empower them to take some of these things on will kind of be the future where we take more of a supportive role. A lot of great information here for council to consider. Thank you, Mr. Suter, for the presentation and bringing this forward to kind of highlight how to best support arts and culture also through capacity and resourcing.
Thank you.
We will now take a short 10-minute break. You want us to keep going? Oh, 15. We'll take a 15-minute break. So we'll be back around 6:30. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are back from our break and moving on to number 4.2, our Child Care Services Business Plan. And we have Kim and Jody presenting. Welcome.
We're on?
You're on.
We're on. Okay. I never know if we're on. Good evening, members of Committee of the Whole. So everybody here knows me. I'm Kim. Well, we have two new council members. I'm Kim Williston, and I am the Director of Community and Social Development. And with me, I have Jody. Well, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Jody Vesso, and I'm the Supervisor for Child Care Services.
So this evening, we're here to provide you with information on the childcare report that you all had a little bit late, so apologies for that. But there were a lot of things there were some changing pieces from the government that impacted our ability to get that to you in a more timely fashion. But the purpose of the report provides information on strategies to help work towards 100% cost recovery. As you're all aware, in January of 2020, which seems like such a long time ago, a lot has happened since 2020. But at that time, the council of that day, which is not the present council, although there are a few of you here this evening still, we were directed to develop a childcare business plan model with the goal of eliminating the early learning childcare subsidy. So that has taken us a little bit of a journey to get there. The report and the business plan provides an update on the current cost recovery and provides options that we are bringing forward for information and for your consideration. So we do have a slide presentation, so we will go through the presentation. Or not. Okay, so as I said, there have been a lot of changes since 2020. Childcare, the landscape has changed. Even when we look at when we were here in 2020, that was COVID, a time of COVID. So we definitely have seen changes in regards to the impact of COVID. And then in addition to that, more recently, we are dealing with the implications of the federal decision to move towards $10 a day childcare. That is still a plan that is being determined by the province, and we'll talk about that as we go into the presentation. So thought it would be helpful to start with a bit of background, particularly as we have two new council members here this evening. So City of Beaumont has been providing childcare for 43 years. In fact, the municipal childcare was the first and only childcare at that time. And so that was in response to obviously a need in the community that was there then and is actually still a need today, as we're all aware, with a very young population. So a little bit of history. We've had various reviews over the years. We had a review in 2006 with Hargreaves and Associates. And then more recently in 2019, there was a childcare review, which was conducted by Grant Thornton. That review had a focus of looking at eliminating childcare. Council chose not to go down that path. And then they made the direction to ask us to come back and look at a 100% cost recovery model, which is what we're here this evening for. We currently have 53 spaces at the school age site, which is the before and after school care. And we have 78 spaces in the early learning childcare centre, which is directly across the road in the Ken Nicol. So childcare services employs one full-time supervisor, and that's Jody, who's here with me. Employs 18 full-time ECEs, early childhood educators, 8 casual staff, and also important to note that we do provide quality childcare. 18 of the full-time ECEs have level 3, and level 3 is the highest level. That's 1, 2, and 3. So the majority of our staff, we are very proud that they have level 3 certification. Also of note is that we have 80 children on the wait list, which is still pretty high. That certainly indicates that there is a need for childcare and quality childcare in Beaumont. Certainly, since 43 years, there have been an increase in private providers in the sector, which is really, really good. They all have their own wait lists, so this is not unique to certainly our childcare services. So there are a lot of moving pieces, but as council is aware, we are responsible for adhering to this childcare deficit funding policy. And this funding policy is what guides us in the way that we operate and financially. And so this funding policy basically lays out that the annual cash contribution of cost recovery will be set at 80% of program expenses, and that's also including direct costs. Now, this next slide, and this was in the business plan, helps to explain, because it can be quite confusing, what those direct costs and indirect costs are. So under this 80-20 funding directive, the direct costs, as you can see, that I won't go through them all, but they're your staff salaries, they're your primary operational expenses. And so those are what is covered under the 80-20 policy that we currently have in place. Oops, I jumped a slide. No, I didn't. So we're going to move on. Jody's going to talk a little bit about busing before we get into some of the financial information.
Good evening. So currently we provide busing to and from schools, all the public schools. Catholic School Board does their own busing. And so they pick up at both centers and do that. Our bus, as you can see for 2023, is a contract of over $87,000. So that is all user pay. The busing is 100% cost recovery. So there was a large jump from 2022 to the parent fee in 2023. That was because we were subcontracting some spaces on the bus with a private provider. And then for the 2022-2023 school year, that private provider got their own transportation to transport their children. So we had to change our busing fee per child to have that 100% cost recovery.
Okay, so moving on to this slide, the financial piece. You can see from this table that while our revenues have been fairly consistently going up, we also, since 2020, we are making great strides at our cost recovery. So 64% we can directly attribute to 2020, to COVID in 2020. And this was specifically due to the fact that the center had to close for a period of time. And so that is fairly low at 64%. So that will be attributed to that. So in 2021, we started to sort of get back on track. We were still kind of COVID there, but we were starting to sort of get back on track with our cost recovery. And then in 2022, you can see, I mean, 84%. We're looking at 89% this year. Obviously, we predicted for 2024, 96%. So 96% is definitely getting us closer to the wishes of council of the 100% cost recovery. And you'll also see that obviously our deficit has gradually gone down. Partially because we are starting to receive additional grants because of this move towards the $15 next year and $10 a day childcare by 2026. So definitely, operationally, we're trying to be fiscally responsible. We know that there are additional grants coming in 2024 that actually aren't reflected in this table because we're still waiting on pieces of information. Like we've come to you today in November, but we still don't have all of the information, nor do other childcare operators. I mean, it's not unique to us, but we really don't know how the provincial government is going to roll out this $10 a day childcare. There are going to be a series of meetings coming up that Jody and I will be attending in December that maybe, will provide us with a little bit more detail. But for the purposes of this report, I feel that we can't be quite as concrete with you as we had probably wanted to be when, we were given this direction back in 2020. So, Jody's going to talk about some of the grants, and then I will certainly come back to that financial piece and some of the implications. But there are a myriad of grants that we already access, the affordability grant being one of the big grants, but there are about half a dozen that we currently access through the provincial government, and we're being told there are going to be more, because the goal here is for the government to make the fees low enough for parents, but they need to also compensate operators. And we're not quite sure what that formula looks like. We do know, like late last week, we did receive correspondence from the province, and they informed us that if we sign an agreement, an affordability grant agreement, which we currently have with them, and if we sign one for 2024, that we won't be able to raise childcare fees. So it's traditionally, we have raised fees 3% annually. And so the province is saying, well, you can't raise these fees on parents because we want to get their fees down. So we're going to offset that by providing you a 3% grant in lieu of that. So we do know that there are these things in the works, but for this financial table, we didn't factor that into that 96%. So there is a potential 3% increase and then some other grants, and I'll let Jody maybe touch on them briefly.
So one of the biggest grants we currently receive is the affordability grant, and that grant directly offsets parent fees. So we submit all of our fees for the year. The government has decided for each age group what that difference is going to be. That comes directly off of those parent fees, and then the parent is responsible for the remainder of the fees. The Alberta Subsidy Program, this is a provincial program based on income. The household threshold is $180,000 a year. So anyone with under that income threshold is eligible to apply for subsidy. That is completely done with the province, and then they communicate with me who's eligible for subsidy and how much they're receiving. That again comes directly off of their invoice with their parent fees, and that money comes directly to the program. There's also a wage top-up grant, which was increased in 2023. So that's to offset staff salaries. So there are some parameters around it about how we can claim that grant, but essentially if you're a level 3 early childhood educator, you qualify for $8.62 an hour additionally on top of your base wage. And then there's the professional development funding and release time grants. Those are to cover courses for professional development, for staff that are not at a level 3 yet to do some of those courses. And that money either goes to back to us to offset those costs that we've paid, or if the staff has paid for that, it goes directly to them. And then there is a little bit of an administrative grant that comes directly to us. The mandatory employer contribution grant offsets the cost of the mandatory contributions, employment contributions that the city pays. So that again comes directly to the city. Another grant that we have not calculated for in any of our financials is the Family Support for Children with Disabilities. So this is a grant that is directly tied to a child that has a diagnosis and an FSCD agreement. So I can't predict when that child's going to come in or that kind of thing. When that situation happens, then we apply for additional funding, and that funding directly offsets the cost of having a staff one-on-one potentially with that child. And then the early learning and childcare funding formula. So right now we currently have the cost control framework, which is part of the Alberta federal agreement. And that provides guidelines for the use of the government grants, which is the grants we're receiving right now. We are moving to a funding formula that will be implemented in 2026, and this will address variations in childcare programs, and will provide funds based on a set of criteria, not just the number of spaces in the program. So currently, most of the grants are tied to the number of spaces in our program and the staff. And moving forward, there will be some other criteria. Again, like Kim said, we'll be having some of those meetings in December as they slowly roll out this implementation.
So as we've said, we're leading into this with a bit of unpredictability because of this new cost control framework. We really don't know financially where we are going to sit. We know new grants are coming. So when we originally put these options together, we didn't have all of the information. Things have changed slightly, but the options in front of you. So just to make them concise. So option 1 is looking at if we eliminate spaces from the infant room. So the infant room, obviously 12 to 24 months, that's where a lot of our cost comes from, because we have to have a higher ratio because these are little guys. And so we need to have additional staff in that room. So, I mean, one of the options that you see in front of you is that room costs a little bit more to operate. We could eliminate that room, eliminate 10 spaces. So that's one of the options. Obviously, that would increase our capacity from 78 to 68 spaces. That would take time to phase in. So if that was a decision that you were interested in considering, that just doesn't happen overnight. Like a lot of these take time to certainly phase in. We just can't turn around to parents and just cut services. So there would be a phase-in period with that. With option 2, we are currently going to be undergoing renovations in the current space, and that would allow us to do a small expansion. So that's kinder age children. So we could do an expansion there. That would require obviously additional staffing resources, but even in doing that, we could potentially, we would increase revenue by a minimum of 10,000, and then with creating spaces grants, there could be potentially more that would come with that. So that's certainly another option. One of the other things that we also added into this was that if we decided not to move forward with that increase of 10 spaces, there actually is room in the lower level of the childcare centre, the early learning childcare centre here, that there would be a room that could potentially be rented out. I mean, we haven't actually looked at how much revenue could be generated, but we're trying to think of every option that could help get us closer. So we put that up there under option 2 if you decided not to consider expansion of 10 spaces. Options 3 and options 4 actually they've changed since even last Friday, because we did receive correspondence regarding the affordability grant. So when we originally provided these options, we were going to be proposing a 3% fee increase on our fees and charges. That was what we were going to suggest and bring forward in the budget. The provincial government has said, no. If you're going to sign an affordability grant agreement with us, you're not going to increase the fees by 3%. We're trying to bring fees down for the parents, as I'd mentioned earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide you with a grant to help you offset that loss of that 3%. So the potential is, once we get all the information, the potential is there will be a 3% revenue increase. It just won't be from the parents. It'll be through the grants that we get. So the way that it's written up here is that, council would, make a decision. That decision really isn't available to us right now. And so then consequently, we had factored in, well, maybe we need to look at a 5% increase. Maybe we need to put that on the table as well. But again, our hands are tied with both options 3 and 4. So I think it's important that you know that. But like I said, having said that, there will be a 3% in lieu of the raise for the parent fees, but those weren't factored into that table that you saw a couple of slides ago. So I think it's safe to say, and I sound like a broken record, but the province's goal is to reach $15 a day next year. That is their goal, and then the following year to get to the $10 a day. So it's very unpredictable for us. It's not just us, it's unpredictable for all childcare operators right now. We're sort of in a bit of a minefield of how is this going to look? How are we going to be able to afford to operate? So it was hard to really present you with any sort of real financial forecasting because we don't know really what we're dealing with. And so when we have more information, I think what we would plan to do is do a bit of a review next year. So next year, once we have that information and we know how the province is, what steps they're looking at taking to get to that $10 a day, we'd come back, we'd have a look at how that impacts us financially, and then we could better forecast and bring something back to council. Because right now it's really hard to do that piece. I mean, the one thing that I offer is, we could expand by 10 spaces in 2024. None of the grant situations that we're dealing with impact that decision, if that was a decision that you wanted to consider. So I think I'll end it there. There's probably a lot of questions. Jody and I are anticipating a lot of questions. I hope that we can answer them. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Jody, for the presentation. I know that we're definitely scrambling for childcare spaces in the city. We just simply don't have enough. I think almost every day on the Beaumont Moms Facebook group, I see people asking for space for this age, and they've been looking for a long time. So definitely concerning. It looks like you've been hard at work in getting closer and closer to the cost recovery, which I think a lot of people would be happy to see. And it's investments in early childcare learning are really invaluable to our society and in shaping our children's future. I won't say much more about that, as my fellow counselor, Councillor Barnhart, is really the pro on this, but I will open it up to my fellow councillors for questions. So we'll start with Councillor Penrod, then we have Munkoff Swain, Van Newkirk, Nintellenbos, and Daniluk, Mayor Daniluk. So Councillor Penrod.
Thank you. As I get to know you, I have to check my notes. Thanks, Ms. Williston and Ms. Vezo, is that correct? Yeah, for your presentation here and for your work with the future of Beaumont. I would like to ask some probing questions. What I'm trying to uncover here is what we're holding on to by way of an asset. I think sometimes in the discussion about cost recovery, or I've even, obviously there's people talking about why we're even in the business of childcare as a city. And I think sometimes that gives short shrift to the real asset that we have. And so I believe that from your history, clearly the services were needed and celebrated at one point in Beaumont, though I know there's been a long history of contention there too. It hasn't ever been, I think, a unanimously supported program. Has the quality of the service changed is a big question. Have the external factors changed significantly so that the program is no longer needed? I think I probably come down a little more on the latter side. I don't hear a lot of criticism about the value this program once had. I think the most valid questions are, is that value still intact? And now that there are more daycare providers and after school, out of school programs. So I want to ask these questions and allow you to respond. Don't feel tied to the exact questions. Again, I'm kind of trying to get a better sense of the global asset that we have here. So what currently differentiates Beaumont's childcare services from those provided by private operators in the city? How does the level of training and experience of the staff compare to private operators? So you talked about we have a huge amount of level 3 training. I think it would be interesting to know. I don't necessarily know what differentiates level 3 from level 2. So maybe you want to respond to that a little bit too. The second, do we offer different types of programming that are specialized or innovative in the market of childcare in Beaumont? And have we won awards or otherwise been recognized for performance or innovation over the years?
Well, thank you for your questions. I'll let Jody take the first part as far as the quality childcare piece. Start with that one.
Okay. I think your center's quality is only as good as the staff that are working there. And so it is important for this program, I think, to have early childhood educators level 3. That means they have their 2-year early childhood diploma. Most of our team comes from MacEwan University, which is a very reputable early childhood a very reputable early learning and childcare program. Because of that, we are able to provide practicum placements for early childhood students. So you can only provide a placement if you have grads from that program. So that definitely helps keep us on top of, emerging trends and things like that. We also follow the Alberta curriculum framework that was in the business plan. And I think that really guides us. And we have had numerous awards. Numerous staff have been recognized for their excellence in providing quality childcare within the province. Sorry, I don't know if I'm answering all your questions.
No, you are. I just really wanted to prime the pump and give you the opportunity to brag up our program.
Yeah. Like I said, I think when you have qualified early childhood educators, that changes the scope of your program. And that has been brought back to us like tenfold from parents, especially parents that have come from other programs. They are just so happy with us. We do a lot of communication, lots of community collaboration, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, Jody. But potentially I could assist here a little bit. I think if we're looking to kind of see how our childcare kind of compares to others and where we stack up, potentially we could even talk about bringing back a report on kind of where we stand and what we've accomplished over the years that we've been here, if that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm quite there yet, though I certainly wouldn't stand in the way of that. I think that would be good information to have. I think that we're in the midst of a historic investment in universally affordable childcare in Canada. And I think it'd be a little bit, although I always want to make sure that we're providing maximum value for the investments that residents make in our city through their taxes. I'm not sure that it's prudent that we push forward or get too in a rush to make big decisions or definitive decisions about this program in particular, while there's so much still up in the air and in flux. So my gut would be to wait until the program rolls out completely and then really assess what we have and the overall need of what we have in the community. So I just want to close with a couple other questions, and if you know the answers to these, I'd love to hear them. Maybe someone else in administration does. Has the city ever explored the possibility of divesting from this program by offering to sell it first to the current employees through the creation of an employee ownership trust or some similar instrument? And secondly, if that has been tried and there's no interest in that, any exploration of the offer to sell it to a private operator with provisions for retaining current employees, spots, and clients? I mean, we're not in a position to take away spots of childcare. There's just simply not enough. So I would never support anything that's going to decrease the level of spots but just some historic information I'm looking for as I learn the file.
Before you go there, I'm just gonna pass it to CEO Schwartz.
Yeah, hi. I just want to wade in a little bit on process, and maybe we can help us all get through this. For a reminder, the request was made to bring back a report for information on achieving 100% cost recovery. At this point, there is no debate, no discussion, no suggestion of whether we're in the service or not in the service. That's certainly something that council can propose. I know this is very passionate for everybody up there, and it is for us as well, and we could start to business case this and what if this all night long. I suggest that perhaps that's at a different time. As the presenters suggested, there is a lot of information that we don't know. I saw this report as a very good news story. We're getting there. We are committed to coming back with an amended policy and some suggestions on the line of business, and that would be at a regular meeting where we can make those decisions. Just don't want it to get too bogged down. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Yeah, I think if we just kind of keep the comments to the report and then what we could possibly be moving forward with the options that we have in front of us. Thank you. You have more questions?
Does that mean there's no response to what I just asked, or that's sort of the scope of tonight's meeting?
Not for tonight's meeting. That would be probably through a councillor inquiry or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
That's it for the questions? Councillor Penrod? Okay. Councillor Moncasway, you're up.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation, and good to see you guys back. First up, fantastic job on the cost recovery to get that there. I mean, I recall back to that challenging and some would say traumatic conversation back in 2020. Yeah, tough to go back there, but I know there was a lot of skepticism, right, in the room or in the community, I'll say, around, where we landed on that, around, is this cost recovery just a, something to placate us to see if we can keep it open. But like I know you personally took this very seriously, Jody. We didn't want to go through another review, and yeah, but to get to 96% is just fantastic. And so thank you for that. Just it means a lot to a lot of people, including myself. Mike said, there's a lot of information we don't know. That's true, but there is a lot of information that we do have, right? And recognize, Councillor Penrod, you weren't here for it. The report in 2020, really underscores the value and talks about the options around, investing in what sort of stuff. So if you get a chance to take a look at that, because I think your questions were fair, but just not for tonight. So go back and take a look at that. There's a lot of good information in there that helped inform that decision. Couple of things I want to underscore in the report here about the relationship that the LCC specifically has with other private daycares. This isn't, what I really appreciate about this is you guys don't view this as a competition, right? It's not a, and whenever someone asks you a layup question, right, you could easily, say our program's better than this because of X, Y, and Z, but I never hear that language. You really try to lift up all providers, and you spend a lot of time with them, helping talk to them, whether it's informal or formally. So it really does, the program really supports Beaumont across the board. But the number that stuck out to get to the report, as has been asked of me by the chair here, the number that stuck out to me is we've got 2,289 children below kindergarten age, 767 spaces, a ratio of 33%, right? Like that, that is not great. And, I think you didn't put that in there to, to alarm us, but it is alarming, right? And so for me, option one is not on the table. We need more childcare spaces than less. So let me just put that out there. Specifically, you talk about the 10 spaces in the kinder room, the ability to do that. Do we need more staff to do that, or are we able to achieve that with the staffing complement that we have?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Munkoff-Swain. Yes, that would require, that option two would actually require 2 additional staff resources. But we have worked with finance to look at the financial implications of that, and with the costs that we would recover through the parent fees and through the grants, we would actually still generate revenue in doing that. At a base, it would be 10,000, which we put in that report. But we also know there are currently grants that exist for creating spaces. So we didn't factor those in because, again, we don't know what that looks like. But absolutely, it would, it would incur 2 additional staff that would be basically kind of paying for themselves.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I don't know how close we are to getting into the specific discussions, but strongly supportive of that. Talking about the space though, right? Like, I mean, you guys can hit 90+ cost recovery as you've talked about here. We're looking at the kinder spaces, but is it limiting? Is the reason why we don't have more than 78 spaces in ELCC is it as a physical concern, like just a physical space of where we are?
Yes, but I will let Jody speak to that.
Yes. I think too, because of just the location and that extra room being in the basement of the program, there's just a certain age group that cannot be down there. And then there's also parameters with licensing about how many children you can have in different groups. So that was kind of our best plan to sort of keep the program flowing. Otherwise, we would get maybe stuck where we have now 25 3-year-olds and only 16 spaces in for the 4-year-olds. And now what are we going to do with them all? So.
Yeah, no, and really appreciate that context. And I don't mean this to be condescending, but I know you guys think through this, strategically around that fact, right? Like it's not just, hey, let's just add more spaces, because then where do they go, right? So there's a whole process around that. So if we can do that in the kinder room, I think it just underscores the longer term discussion that we had earlier tonight around what we need as a community, big picture, long term. So if we can find additional space, I'd be all for that. But for me, I'll leave it there, and I certainly support moving forward with those additional spaces there. And I'll underscore that option one off the table for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Over to Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation tonight. Couple of questions. The first one's just around the timing. When is the right time to debate this FIN 1601? Is it in the spring once there's some more certainty? Is that what you're thinking? I think that's what the report alludes to, but.
Yes, Councillor Van Newkirk, that's what we would recommend, because until we have that information, I don't think we can take that next step in amending that policy.
So we're just going to leave that with you, and then once there's enough certainty, then you're going to bring it back. Is that kind of the plan?
That's the plan.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. A question around the options. Can you stack up the options? You kind of alluded to that already, because option 2 would happen with option 3 if the government did 3%. That song and dance. So I think inherently 2 and 3 might stack based upon what you were saying. Is that kind of what I heard?
You're correct in that.
Yeah. So it's quite a no-brainer then. You know, we add some spaces, get some more cost recovery, add that 3%. You know, for me, I just want to keep it very simple because last time wasn't simple. I did go back and relive that January 14th, 2020 meeting last night. Although the 2 hours, 20 minutes, I did only do it in an hour 20. So I did some fast forwarding, but I needed to do that to get myself in the frame of mind for a conversation tonight. So it scarred me a bit. But anyways, so for me, like, I just want to keep it simple, right? Like, let's not jeopardize our opportunity at grants. Let's not jeopardize our opportunity at the $15 or $10 daycare or whatever's there. If we can add some spaces for a nominal fee, which, you know, you didn't remind us, but we will remind ourselves that without the renovations, we couldn't do that before. You know, this option wasn't available before because the renovations hadn't happened, right? So we've evolved the conversation. So, and then, you know, and then we'll when FIN 1601 comes back, you know, we'll worry about what that percentage is, right? So, you know, that's kind of my message is, you know, if we can gain some more spaces, great. And we can keep it simple, even better, and keep all the opportunities open. When someone opens a can of worms on busing, then I'll add a 2 cents there, but I won't do that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You want me to get into that right now, or I'll leave it to Councillor Natalia-Vaz. I'll go at the end.
Perfect. Thank you. Much appreciated, and very much appreciate the report that you had put together, both of you, as well as your comments. I'm all about transparency, and especially with the budget that has just come out, and some people are shell shocked, and rightfully so. So I want to be as transparent as we can. This 96% cost recovery, is that considering that we would factor in all 4 of the proposed options, or certain amount of those options, or is that additional cost recovery?
So we are projecting a 96% cost recovery. These options that we're proposing will be in addition to move the needle closer to the 100% cost recovery.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's important for everyone to know, because it could be as simple as going with one of those options to get that full 100% cost recovery. Just in terms of comparison, I'm not going to go into necessarily exactly what you guys provide, but a similar group or a similar service with the level 3 educator, how would someone like that compare in terms of pricing to the model that we propose to our community members, like per child, let's say?
Okay, can you just rephrase that question?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a similar service provider with those level 3 educators, how would our costs compare to a group that is near identical in the service they provide?
So when you're talking about costs, are you talking about fees that we charge parents?
Yes. Yeah.
So our fees are very market average. So Jody, every year, she has good relationships with the private providers. So she contacts them on an annual basis to see where they're setting their fees in the different age groups. And then we determine a fee increase based on where we're sitting in the market. A 3% is actually fairly standard in childcare. So we are sitting, I think Jody might be able to talk to this in a little bit more detail, but we are sitting right middle of the pack as far as other providers and what fees. It varies because some providers provide snacks, some provide a full meal service. So there are some variables in childcare to a certain extent on what's included, but we would sit, I think that's fair to say, very, very middle of the pack. In Beaumont, that is, in Beaumont.
Okay, perfect. And then just my last question, because obviously it's the whole of the community we're looking after. In terms of accessibility, obviously there's limited spots, but is it the existing group that continues on until they're finished? Or is there the opportunity for the general population? Is there a draw or something that allows newcomers to come in aside from an individual leaving?
So anyone is welcome to go on our wait list. There is a $50 fee that's refundable once they start in care. And then typically how it works is we run like a school year. So I have new enrollments that start for September 1st. All of the previous children bump up to their next room, which also means the ratios increase. So then I'm able to take children off the wait list in all different age categories. So then typically for September 1st, we're full, and then I might have a few spaces to fill January, February, again, because those ratios have increased, those children are getting older, and then we're usually at capacity until the following September 1st, unless somebody has given notice and leaving the program.
Okay, thank you. So just to confirm, existing members would have priority over the general community?
Within the ELCC, yes, like up to the next room, up until kindergarten.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. And now over to Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Thank you, ladies, for presentation. Very informative, and looking for more information as it comes available from, as you mentioned in the report. Council made a decision a few years ago to maintain the program. It was a good decision because we followed up with excellent work in the cost recovery model. It wasn't just grants and increased fees. Administration did a great job, what they could control internally to get us that cost recovery model. I am absolutely thrilled at 96% for 2024. It goes, in my opinion, Jody, to your excellent management of the staff resources you had to work with to get us this cost recovery model. So it's a three-pronged approach. It was fee increases, grants, and good management by you the last 3 years, in my opinion, to get this cost recovery model to where it's at. So I'm thrilled this report, the numbers that are coming in front of me, I'm very happy with that. And it reinforces good management in our daycare, our child care daycare. I get those wrong all the time. So I said it wrong, one of the two, but it's a great program. It always has been a very good program from quality perspective. And I appreciate the work you've done and Ms. Willison in this area. And I'm very happy with this report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And last but not least, Councillor Bernhardt.
Didn't know if I'd get a chance. There's so many good questions and comments. And thank you, Chair. Honestly, yeah, I could come up with a gazillion questions, but I think the intent of this report is to let us know things are going in the right direction. And I'm really pleased to see that. I know very well about the turmoil right now in the childcare community, awaiting for news on how can you raise fees? How can you survive? I mean, honestly, our childcare staff are very fortunate that the city is able to maintain what we're able to do and to keep the level 3s that we have. And I'm sure we're not paying them enough, but we're paying them well, better than in some other places. So I'm really pleased we're going in the direction we're going. I wish more spaces like ours could be available in the community. When I say like ours, I mean in terms of where the fees go back into the program rather than from a strictly entrepreneurial perspective. And I say that with some fear and trepidation because I don't mean that there's anything wrong with entrepreneurialism. Entrepreneur myself, but in terms of any human service, and I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since I've read your report, we don't question how we have to support hospitals. We don't question how we support schools. Why do we question how we support childcare? It just doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll continue down that road. People know I've been in childcare, feels like all my life. 43 years was the same number that I've been in Alberta's childcare scene. So I can really relate to the ups and downs and the changes, and government just doesn't seem to ever get it to stay in one place. We seem to change that. The only more complex budgeting that I know of is affordable housing. And, why do I pick these two areas to work in? I do not know. The only question I think I would have is around the infant spaces. And I'm of two minds there, because one of the downsides I see with the infant spaces being reduced would be that once we have infant spaces, they stay with us. The children and the families stay with us. And to Councillor Natellenboss's point, I know they're more expensive. And the other part of this is perhaps there's a way of dealing with family day home situation if we do go in that direction, because I know it is a big expense. And if it means we can get many more preschool spaces, then it might be, the trade-off might be a good one, because there might be more spaces available for infants in family day homes. So yeah, no, I think you've done an admirable job of going in the direction that previous councils have set for you. And more than happy if this does come up for debate, but I like the plan I think you're putting forward is to wait until we get more certainty and then come back and let us know what the policy needs to be. So thank you very much for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I just have a couple of questions. Can you remind me, is there a specific date that the province is supposed to kind of have some of this completed and communicated out to everyone, or is it all up in the air?
So last year we found out in March that it was going to be backdated to January. So that's kind of the problem. But we did get the letter last week, and we are doing some virtual sessions, I guess, with the province to give some feedback and to get some feedback in early December. So I think they're trying to be proactive. It just takes a little bit of time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to dig into busing a little bit. I heard from quite a few parents about the jump in the busing fees. I realized in the report it says that we explored the option of purchasing a bus, but it wasn't feasible and really no more affordable. How long ago did we visit that? Is this something we should potentially revisit? I just wonder how the other daycares are able to purchase a bus and charge, 95 to 100. But we may not be able to do that. So I'm just trying to kind of sort out the logistics around it. Is there any additional information you guys could provide around that, or?
Jody's like, you go ahead. You go ahead. Busing is a challenging issue for childcare for sure. So I'm going to estimate we explored this probably 4 or 5 years ago.
I think at the time of the other
review. So maybe 4 years ago. So we certainly did look. And at that time, we had a supervisor of the school age site who did a little bit of work into looking at the cost of purchasing a bus. What he determined, I don't have the figures. I don't know, Jody, if you recall them, but what was determined, the cost of the bus, to purchase the bus, maintain the bus, mechanically keep it on the road, was actually going to be a considerable upfront cost that would take a number of years, quite a number of years to pay for itself. Mm-hmm. And so the parents wouldn't be realizing lower busing fees straight away. It might be, year 3, year 4 before we could get down to anything close to like that $100, which seems to be the average for private providers. So yes, so it definitely was explored back then. I think the sentiment was that we're taking on another asset, we're taking on another piece of equipment, it has to be maintained, that would impact other departments in the organization. As far as operating it, and Jody, this is my understanding, the private providers have staff, they don't hire in addition a driver, correct? So it would be one of Jody's staff that she would determine that would now be, add bus driver to their role. So that certainly is something to consider if we were to go down that path as well. But still, I know Jody had reached out to one of our colleagues, a private provider, and asked if they could provide us with a little bit of information on how much their buses cost. And as of tonight, that childcare centre didn't get back to us, but I'm sure they will. We have great relationships with them. So Jody will get that information just to get a sense of how much it costs, what's the size of the van, the minibus that's needed, because you do need to factor that into it as well, like number of spaces and number of seats.
Yeah.
So it's
and I think that there is obviously like a few nuances to it, and whether your staff want to drive a bus is another thing to consider, right? But I think potentially that might be something I could suggest to bring back a report or something if we're looking for more information, especially if the last time we looked at it, it was 4 years ago. Costs will have changed. quite a bit 4 years to now as well. So I will revisit that at another time, but thank you for your answers on that. And Councillor Munkoff-Swain, another.
Yeah, so you said you'll revisit that at another time. So let me dive into that a bit more then and see if I can get you to revisit it now. I mean, I understand that, anecdotally we heard, this and that, and yes, adds maintenance costs, all that sort of stuff. But right now they're paying that anyway through the contracted price. I think you said like $86,000 a year in contracting busing. I don't know how much these buses cost. But there is the added value of this as well, right? That if there was a bus purchased for the city, and yes, it adds, where you're going to store it, who's going to repair it, all that sort of stuff. But we have scale that we can work with that. But there are multiple other events around the city that this bus could be used for, right? And so I would be very interested in in some sort of report or review that looks at that. We have capital dollars, right? That could go to something like this, and then through the fees could be paid back over time. And so I'd be interested in that analysis, and mainly obviously to help the parents that are using that, but more importantly, there is the potential other opportunities that we could use that bus for around the city, and not just the mayor's golf tournament to get people back to their homes safely. So I don't know. So you were thinking of pausing on that, or what was your thought process on asking for that information, recognizing we're in committee of the whole?
Yeah, probably coming back with a nom next week.
Okay. That was all I wanted to tease out, was
okay. where I was coming from. Yeah,
and stop that 15-minute. Anyway, looking forward to your notice of motion.
Councillor Van Newkirk, you popped off? Okay. Yep. All right. So no other questions here for the presenters? Okay, well, thank you so much. I think the value you guys provide through our childcare services are much needed. And I know even people from outside our community come and ask about what we offer here and are interested in it. And clearly with a wait list of 80 children, and that doesn't even account the wait list that the other daycares have, this service is important. So thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the very thorough report as well.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next one, number 4.3, Planning and Development Department Key Initiatives Update. Is that Ms. Raymond? No. Oh, you're sitting back on this one, Johanna. No, you could do whatever you like. If you want to sit there. Okay. Okay, come on up. Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? Oh, I do try that. Yes, sure.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Your microphone is on, so whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you to the chair and members of the committee. With me tonight is Joanna Swong, our manager of long-range planning, Sean Hipkiss, our manager of development services, is unfortunately at a family matter and is unable to join us. So 2023 has been a very busy year for planning and development. We've provided the summary in attachment 1. It doesn't set out everything that we've done in the department over this year. In addition to processing a record-breaking number again of residential permits, and also having a very busy year on the commercial front. We've also been very hard at work, being a partner in the community, whether that's working with residents or the development industry, to really build that great community. We're the fastest growing community in the region, and we're finding that the needs and expectations of our residents and developers are changing
which is really necessitating kind of looking at that planning framework that we've really been looking at, over the past 7 or 8 years. So a few different things that we've done. We've got a few different overarching initiatives that are shown on the attachment. One of those would be the initiation of the end-to-end development review process, which is a culmination of the service review that we had undertaken in 2022. So that's aiming to transform planning, engineering, and development services in the city to make it easier to do business with us. It also has a number of process stuff and looking at some of those communication challenges that were highlighted through that report. With that, we're building on improving customer service and also back to that relationship building. So we've instituted regular meetings with the development industry, but before those were mostly ad hoc. And then we're also working very hard on our electronic permitting implementation for residential development and building permits. We have internally launched this software, and they've recently, I guess, released a new version of the system, which we're actually migrating to, which is much more user-friendly than the current version. And once we are migrated to that new version in January this year, it's going to begin, and we will be launching to the public in May, I believe, is our intended launch date here, although we've talked about how that times in with our busy season, not wanting to really launch a new system to the public in the midst of a time when they are just inundating us with permits is something we are having a lot of discussion about as to what that exact timing looks like. But regardless, we are working towards that. And there is a lot of work that is ongoing with the team to complete this task. We're also working on other strategic projects for the city, including supporting the development of the Innovation Business Park area structure plan. Been doing that. We'll be working on the corridor study with Alberta Transportation here coming up this year as the area structure plan is being finalized and will be presented for approval in Q1. So in addition to the record-breaking residential permits that our development services team has been working on, they've also been focused on the land use bylaw review work over the past couple of years and are looking to bring those changes back to council in the new year. We're looking end of Q2. We will be doing engagement work. We've noticed that there is a lot of misunderstanding about what we're trying to do through density or through our other planning policies. I think we want to make sure that people understand and we have a chance to be able to address some of the challenges. So we hear things like, 3 dwelling units don't pay their fair share. What does density do for municipal services? So the more houses you have on a pipe or on a line actually decreases our costs. And we have been planning for those. So that's a more efficient use of our infrastructure. So those are just some things that we want to be able to talk with people about. So we are working with our communications team to be able to provide that education campaign, because I think it's more than just, here are the amendments we want to make. I think we'll get bogged down when we come through and we bring that forward. I think we'll have a lot of opposition that isn't maybe actually needed. So we will all be back in front of council again in Q1 with our annual land use bylaw report and an update on development activity in the city. And then we've been quietly working on many long-range planning initiatives, whether it's policy planning through the urban ag plan or our transit portfolio, regional planning through continuing participation in EMRB initiatives. We're also partaking in the Edmonton Region Network Study, which is looking at an 80-year, what will the highway network be like? We're also doing growth planning through the work through the Elon Joint High School site, as well as we're going to be undertaking an offsite levy review. It's not shown in here, but it is something that we did note in our 2-pager as a budget initiative coming up. We'll be working with our friends in finance on that. So more importantly, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wong, and he's going to take you through maybe a couple of highlights in terms of his service area. One of the things that we had committed to council that we would do would be to come back with an update on the transportation master plan. The attachment 1 does provide 3 different things that we feel have done and are activating that plan. So if you have any questions, happy to take them, but I'll turn it over to Joannis.
Yes, for long-range planning. Hi, I'm Councillor Penrod and Lieutenant Lambols, right? And my name is Johannes Wong, and I'm the manager of long-range planning. Is meeting you. So for long-range planning, we've been busy working this year on. Last week we came with the urban agriculture plan to present to council, and we are bringing up back a report at the end of Q2 for how we implement the short-term wins. And we also working on the Elon school site for the last year. And actually one of the things that not a council or city directive is we applied for a CMHC grant and for a housing supply challenge, and we got $424,000 to develop a housing site selection tool. And we are in the midst of we sort of finalize the data set that we need to have and how to represent it into the GIS database and visually present on the with a computer system so that people can select on the map and compare to the designated criteria. For example, the walking distance to various schools, for health facilities. And if we have local transit, then we will be measuring the proximity to transit stops, etc., and identify which site is the best for certain kinds of housing, basically. And we are focusing on multi-units rental housing and affordable housing, basically. And so we will be updating council as we have those the tools developed, because we want to have more people testing the tool before we submitting back to CMHC. So, and the other thing that I want to highlight is over the years, at least for the last several years that I'm with the City of Beaumont, we developed several major initiatives and projects, and those are citywide projects, and those plans requires implementation, and that is part of why we do plans. But unfortunately, because of the resourcing capacity issues, we can only do so much. And even though that is something that we are cognizant of, and we will be working very hard to coordinate with other city departments to implement those outcomes for the master plans and strategies that we developed. But this is what it is, and we will be doing our due diligence to continue to implement those plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We will start off with a few questions. I think implementing the KPMG service review recommendations will be very important, ensuring our more prompt service delivery, which is great. Happy to see the ball rolling on that. Your department is a busy one. Lots of initiatives going on here, with obviously the Elon school sites and Innovation Park being key priorities. I'm really looking forward to seeing and hearing more about the housing site selector tool. I think that sounds really neat. So looking forward to that. I will open it up to my fellow councillors before I say anything, and Mayor. So we have Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Tellenboss, and Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the update. There's a lot in here. We kind of don't know where to start, but I'm going to go at the very end, actually. Because Mr. Wong, when you talked about the plan implementation, kind of answered one of the questions I was going to ask. So affordable housing strategy, for example, it's a strategy that covers more than one department. And so that's the reason why you're looking for a coordinator to kind of work in that realm. So my question was, maybe I should ask the question instead of answering it. The question I was going to ask you, and I will ask you, is who takes the affordable housing strategy and implements it, and how is that happening now? I know we've written the plan, you're watching over it, the recommendations, but it really doesn't have a lot of legs. And I, for one, am kind of looking at where can we go to kind of move it along. So anything you can say there that might help in terms of, is the only answer that we need a staff? Is there anything else that might help?
Kim's group, the Community and Social Services Development, they are part of the implementation team. So that the major departments, the planning and FCSS, we are spearheading with the implementation of that. And I believe community services, they came with the update probably back in spring and talk a little bit about their implementation of the affordable housing strategy. And they are doing their part, but then for planning, we are going to come back with a council motions on Habitat for Humanity in mid-December, 2 councils later on. And that is an opportunity to talk about affordable housing strategy. And during the research and also during the environmental scan, when we were working on the housing supply challenge, is that it is good to have all kinds of implementation tools or things that we can do to help affordable housing. But at the end of the day, a lot of the affordable housing providers, they are looking for land that they can build affordable housing. And they want also the municipalities to be able to be the liaison, to be the bridge to work with developers or home builders so that when they acquire land for affordable housing, they won't be paying a lot more than what the minimum, right? And also the home builders will be able to build maybe a little bit of profits, but not as usual profits. So they want the municipality to be able to help them to make that conversation. And also if the municipality is able to help, for example, through some incentive programs, for example, grants, or even the municipality has surplus land or land that can be devoted for affordable housing, it would be given to these organizations or groups to build affordable housing. I think that is the one of the most important and difficult things for to address the affordable housing strategies. Other things, theoretically, it is the programs to set up, right?
So, Mr. Wong, thank you. You've given me some great ideas here because I know that strategy is coming back and that Habitat for Humanity, et cetera. I mean, other ideas. So I've been asking Leduc Regional Housing Foundation for information as to like where and when, what's the need. We have a lot of that information. So I think I see a notice of motion in my future here to get some more information about how the city can support that. The only other area that I wanted to ask you about was transit. And I'm not sure if this is yourself or Ms. Raymond, but just feeling a little bit shaky about what's been put forward in our budget around moving this forward. So I wonder if you could just tell me, when do we next hear about what's happening with Leduc Transit?
We are coming back to council next Tuesday with another report.
So council meeting. And
there will be a closed session discussion. We invited the Leduc Transit representative to come because Kevin, is an expert in the area, and he's helping us throughout the discussion. So
more to come next week.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Natellenbos.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for the report. Appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of good things here. One thing that I'm excited about is that red tape that is spoken about quite a bit. And I think getting to an electronic permit phase can help accelerate and make a lot of our developments a little more efficient. So I do appreciate that. One thing I will take, just because of a comment that was made in regards to the dwelling units, I'll take it as a segue for me to just hop in and just explain what I've heard from the community and what's important to a lot of community members. I'll start with the comment that was made in regards to potential the revenue or tax base that comes from some of these units, and potentially you guys clarifying that down the road. I would appreciate that. I am quite familiar with obviously the assessment of the value of that property goes up as you have additional units in there. But considering the individuals that may live in that and the fact that that may be a business in the sense that it may be a rental property, there are a lot of individuals within that those dwelling units that use our facilities, our infrastructure, our services, and that's part of my motion for next meeting. So I just wanted to touch on that because it was discussed. And then secondary to that, I mean, I can appreciate as the community grows, the benefits behind some of this densified housing and communities. Again, speaking for the community members that I've interacted with, I'm not so sure that the concern is density in a area where it is planned. And everyone knows what they're getting into. The concern that I've seen with a lot of members of the community is that these additional dwelling units are being put in communities that were basically established, and it's disrupting the community heavily by having these mini hotels or these rental properties in place. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents there, but appreciate the report.
Thank you, Councillor. That's it for your questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk, or did you guys want to respond? You guys are okay? Okay. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I was happy to hear in the opening parts of your remarks that we're going to look at some communication around what we're doing, why we're doing it, density targets, because right now the narrative on density and density targets has been completely lost. It's gone, ship sailed, train down the tracks. And I'm hoping that some of the planned upcoming communications can get some traction back in some of that messaging to help people understand what the density targets are, why they're there, what the implications are, and all of those pieces. So I think we literally need to start back at the beginning on some of them educational pieces, and I look forward to that. One of the nerves that was poked in the last 10 days here is the recent parking ban on 46th Ave. It's completely inflamed the parking concern people in the community. And similar to what Councillor Natellenbos just said, the concerns that I hear are less about the density and they're more about parking. And council heard a lot from me about parking when I went down in flames in 4 votes not too many meetings ago. But you know, I'm not gonna let that be, because you know, until we start parking better, we're still gonna have these same problems. But some questions. I appreciate the initiative update because there's a lot that your group is doing, and it's probably undersold and undertold in the community how much planning and development has to do what's in front of them and how wide the swath is that the department looks after. So having a initiative update like this in the agenda actually does help, because then I can point back to this list of projects and say, did you know this is supported here? Did you know this is supported there? So pointed question on the traffic calming on 56A Street. When will council get an update on that pilot project with the temporary parking bollards that were put up? Is there a timing on that?
This is infrastructure. When they put the road closure, not road closure, the curb extension,
yeah,
a couple months ago, but the project concluded in October, and they're currently having a consultant Bund and Associates to come and have evaluations to evaluate whether this will be a permanent solution or it will be another way of devising the traffic impacts there. So I think they are conducting the study now, but with regarding to the timing, unfortunately, I don't know. But I know that they're working on the studies and try to come up with an answer whether this will be a permanent fixture or it will be another way of resolving the issues.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I guess that leads me to another question: is will council get an update on that pilot program before a decision like that is made?
I don't know. I would believe so, because that is part of the program.
Okay.
I'm just gonna pass it to CEO Shorts real quick.
If you turn off Nathan, you'll be.
See, we switched mics over here just to mess with your mind. Yes, the intention is to bring back the results of that report. Timeline, I'm not sure, but we'll know shortly.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good. A second one, in the complete street guidelines, there's reference to an 880 principle. What is that?
It is a design principles that a street will be it will be to accommodate from age 8 to 880.
Okay.
Age 80, yeah. So everybody is welcome and be comfortable.
Yeah, we know from research that a street that works for an 8-year-old to be able to cross the road on their own, for an 80-year-old will work for everybody. We know that they've got increased timelines for being able to, you know, get across the road, or where you put those buttons or those different things. So it's called that 880 principle, but it's really, we've tried to kind of soften it. It's more like a complete street. So we just want to build a street that really works for everybody without talking in a jargon.
Yeah, and it obviously checks numerous boxes that we talk about for accessibility and you know, planning and, you know, all that. So that's good. Thank you. Last one is just another timing on a discussion or an update. So regarding the land joint school site, the recent open houses have opened the conversation in the community about the school siting, the roads, the dog park, you know, relocation, all of that stuff. Just wondering, when will council receive the next update on the progress of the joint school site?
Thank you for that question. We hadn't actually, we've been working through the area structure plan, so we were intending to bring that forward when we were to bring that forward for approval for the area structure plan itself and the neighborhood structure plan. So the intention was to bring that forward, I believe in spring, but we could come with an update as maybe part of our land use bylaw. We could bring an update on that.
Yeah, I think
provide that to council or through a brief.
I think that would be helpful. The open house has really opened a conversation here that I don't know that council is entirely equipped to handle, just because we're not on the front lines of the planning and the moving pieces. So anything that administration can do to provide an update, you know, to help that, I think would be good. So
we'll prepare a briefing for council.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That concludes my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up to Councilman Hucher's first comment about the narrative on the density targets. I saw you both writing down some notes and nodding your head in agreement with some more communication. I appreciate your taking that point quite seriously, because it is a narrative that we sort of lost, but I think density target is something we have no control over, and I think sometimes people don't understand that. It's a very complicated topic, and more communication we very much appreciate it. So I'm happy you agree with that, and that's something we need to work on. So we are going the right direction. We are doing good work in that area, but it is difficult to communicate to our residents how important density targets are. So thank you for being open to that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilor Monkhoff-Swain.
Just very briefly, the joint high school site, you know, you talk about coming back in the spring. You know, we've got a $12 million ask in front of us at budget. So maybe just help us. You guys will be ready to talk through kind of where we're at with that at budget time. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, no other questions here. I think the education piece will be very important. I think we'd prevent a lot of complaints by getting that information out there. A lot of my questions were answered this evening through your additional information in your presentation and other questions. Appreciate this update. Your department is working through quite a bit of stuff, so this update is much appreciated. Thank you very much. All right, moving along. Now we're moving on to 5.1, Councillor Inquiries. Councillor Barnhart had an inquiry. It was just for information only. And I believe that is it for this evening. And we are moving to adjournment. adjournment of my first meeting as deputy mayor. I made it. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for making it easy on me. So adjourning at 7:57.